There's a mic here if you want it.
A special time for all of us, as I mentioned before. Her Majesty the Queen's been with us, for most of us, throughout all our lives. And those that have seen another monarch, I don't know how much you can remember of that monarch. You will have seen lots of tributes paid, and you'll have read lots about her over the last few days, and I'm sure you will over the next few weeks as well. And it paints a picture of a wonderful, wonderful woman whose qualities I think we all know. But having served over 32 years in the army, and there are a couple of others here who have also been in the armed forces, the armed forces have a special affinity with the monarch. Because in those days, we used to work so closely with them. I didn't know much about the Queen when I was growing up. The first thing I remember, I think I was 9, the Silver Jubilee parties that went around, and the street parties and so on, and that was the first time I really consciously thought, oh, we have a Queen. As a youngster, everything revolved around football for me and not much else. And then in 1986, I joined the army as a musician, and I joined as an 18-year-old, the 16th Fifth, the Queen's Royal Lancers. And so, as you'd expect, the first thing we had to do was learn our history and heritage, and realise actually that we were the Queen's Royal Lancers. And as I joined, I had to sign my oath of allegiance to the Queen. And so as a Queen's Royal Lancer, I was quite proud of the fact, and I've often told a few people that my loyalty was never in question, because I was a Queen's Royal Lancer. And so when the national anthem was played, I didn't have to stand up. And it often created a lot of trouble. We were very proud of the fact that we didn't have to stand up because we were the Queen's Royal Lancers, and we didn't need to. But what does that mean? And what did that mean for us and our relationship, if you like, with the Queen? Well, you will have seen Troop in the Colour, I'm sure, on many occasions, and realise that there are many hours spent on parade. Not just by the troops, but by her and the monarch and the other members of royalty at different times. And they would spend hours on parade. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when she was 16 years old, she was made Colonel-in-Chief of the Grenadier Guards, who were on duty at Windsor Castle at that time. So during the war, at 16, she was made Colonel-in-Chief of the Grenadier Guards. And I read yesterday that she, at that time, began writing to the mothers of the soldiers who were dying in the war at that time. That's how seriously she took her duty. And she pleaded with her father, the king, to allow her to have uniformed service before the end of the war, because he didn't want her to. But she pleaded with him, and she got that. And so she entered uniformed service at the end of the war. As a member of the 16th Fifth, the Queen's Royal Lancers, she was my Colonel-in-Chief, and I also realised she's not just Colonel-in-Chief to that regiment at that time, but she was Colonel-in-Chief to 16 different regiments, and corps, and also many more within the Commonwealth. But not just that, she was also patron to over 600 charities. And so you can imagine all of these people, I know from the services side of things, that there will be requests at every round number, if you like, of a celebration for the Queen to be in attendance for a parade. And wherever she could, she did. And it will be the same for all those charities as well. Whenever they had a big event, they would ask for the Queen to go. And if her schedule permitted, she would go. And it's only at these times when you sometimes get to work alongside or near her that you realise the commitment that she made. Have any of you been to a garden party, Buckingham Palace? No? There are 8 each year, 4 in Buckingham Palace and 4 at Holyrood, during which she hosts 30,000 visitors. And she makes the effort to meet every one of them on these garden parties. I remember in 2013 I was director of music at the Royal Signals, and the band was in Buckingham Palace performing music for the garden party. So each garden party, because her back garden is so big, there are two bands. So there'd be one down near the lake and the other one towards the house. And you can imagine with all these thousands of people attending each time, and there'd be music being played, that we couldn't actually hear or see each other, so we would have a flag system. So we would play a piece of music, and then we would drop the flag, the other band would raise the flag to say they acknowledged it, and then they would play. So there's only one band playing at a time, and during this time, the Queen would walk round and meet everybody. Now on this particular occasion, when I was there as director of music of the band, we were there, as you would expect, very early, setting up, making sure that we weren't in the way of any of the public when they arrived, because they arrive earlier than Her Majesty, because you've got something like 8,000 or 10,000 people to get into the garden. So we set up very early, we do a sound check, make sure we liaise with the other band, make sure we're okay. And at this time, an 87-year-old lady with a headscarf came down from the palace. Good morning, Your Majesty, how are you? She was 87 at the time, and she felt it was right and proper that when she's having people visit her in her back garden, she was walking the land to check that everything was in order. At 87. This is the dedication of Her Majesty the Queen. So she went all the way around the garden, she met me, she chatted to the band, made sure everything was okay, we had everything we needed. I'm sure somebody else would have taken care of that, but she felt that she wanted to ask and come round and check at 87. She then went round the rest and checked that all the marquees were in place. Bear in mind, this has happened once or twice before. And this was just a mark of the lady that she was incredibly humble and yet dedicated, and also made a point of meeting every person who went to that party. And then she would do the same in Hollywood. She was steadfast and true, always sought to mediate for calm, peace, and cooperation. And those that remember the press attacks on the royal family over the last 20 or 30 years, always you thought, my goodness, how can they put up with these attacks? And yet she always presented the steadfast, the stoic, the right and proper response. And we all, as the country, took reassurance from that and took that example. Even more so, I think, in 2015, when she met with Martin McGuinness and shook his hand. A former leader of the IRA, bearing in mind that she'd lost a member of her family, Prince Philip's uncle, Lord Mountbatten, when he was assassinated by the IRA. And yet she had it within her to forgive for something like that. Her selfless commitment and her willingness to serve, to lead. At the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where all of the officers of the British Army are trained, their motto is serve to lead. And one of the values is selfless commitment. And I think we couldn't have had a better example than the Queen. We read last week Psalm 37, and verse 37 of that psalm says, "Watch the blameless and observe the upright," so that we can have that example. Watch those who are upright and steadfast and true, and as Mick will mention in a moment, faithful to the Lord and trust in Him, and follow their example.